Welcome to the English Language Arts module, Independent Reading for grades 6 through 12. In this module, we will delve deeper into understanding independent reading. The vision of the Department of Curriculum and Instruction is to transform the learning environment for all students. The mission of the Department of Curriculum and Instruction is to advance the practice of teaching and learning by providing direct and indirect student-centered support based on research and grounded in real-world experiences. We hope that this module will deepen your knowledge of independent reading as you support your students. This module is aligned to TEKS Standard Number 3 Instructional Strategies. Our agenda for this module is as follows. First, we will take a look at the learning targets and success criteria. Then, we will dive into independent reading, looking at the definition, looking at building a reading culture, setting up the classroom library, and the complement conference. At the end of this module, you will have an opportunity to reflect and determine your next steps for independent reading. We will also offer suggestions for self-paced learning and a short list of resources. When we're through today, we hope you can implement independent reading components within the ELA block and/or refine your practices if that's something that you already do. In preparation for viewing the module, collect the following items so that you can take notes and complete the activities provided. You will need paper and a pen or pencil. Please visit the resource folder to download the following documents: the independent reading note-taking sheet and 2 articles, Making Independent Reading Work by Barbara Moss and Creating Passionate Readers Through Independent Reading by Fran McVeigh. During this module, you will learn about independent reading and the complement conference at the secondary level. After completing this module, you should be able to implement independent reading as a component of direct and explicit reading comprehension instruction. Independent reading aligns to the DCSD ELA 612 instructional plan. During the work period, direct and explicit reading comprehension instruction can come in the form of book clubs, literature circles, and independent reading. During independent reading time, students apply grade level standards, the skills, and the strategies to their independent level text. Many of us may define independent reading as reading that a person chooses to do on their own, or reading that's not required to do, or reading that's not assigned, or reading that they will not be tested on or questioned about, since it is being done for their own independent or individual purposes. That's what many of us define independent reading as. But in reality, independent reading also involves making choices, whether or not to read, why to read, when to read, where to read, and how to read. Let's delve deeper into understanding independent reading. In a moment, you will read the article Making Independent Reading Work by Barbara Moss. As you read the article, consider these 3 questions. What resonates with you? What challenges you? What's a goal you have for independent reading? If you are working with a grade level team, turn and talk to discuss your responses. And please Save your responses as evidence that you have worked through this module. Now, pause the module to read the article. Be sure to jot down your thoughts on the note-taking sheet found in the resource folder. In DeKalb, we emphasize independent reading with teacher support and scaffolding. This means the teacher has a strong instructional role. During the mini lesson, the teacher uses read aloud, think aloud to model application of strategies. A classroom library provides a range of text for students, considering genre, authors, interest level, perspective, and representation. Engagement and motivation is encouraged when students choose their own books and talk about those choices. Those book choices are at a student's independent level, considering all measures of text complexity. While students read, teachers conduct individual conferences as a form of differentiated instructional support and formative assessment. And finally, students are accountable by being involved in discussion and writing about their books and self-assessment about their reading progress. A copy of this document is in the resource folder. Again, as teachers support students in increasing text complexity, remember that students build stamina for those texts through independent reading. Students need to read a variety of texts at varied lengths within the appropriate stretch lexile bands. Now, let's take a moment and watch a video from the teaching channel about building a culture of reading within a school and within a classroom. While watching the video clip, think about how the teachers support their students with independent reading by including strategies to scaffold them to increased text complexities. Think about what qualities you notice as the teachers emphasize the importance of independent reading. Jot down your noticings on the note-taking sheet. If you are working with a grade level team, turn and talk to discuss your responses. And again, please save your responses as evidence that you have worked through this module. Now, pause the module and watch the 5-minute video. The link to the video is in the resource folder. Be sure to jot down your thoughts on the note-taking sheet, which is also in the resource folder. Now that you've watched the video, we hope that there are some things that you noticed. For instance, did you notice how building a culture of reading allows readers to apply independently what they have learned through whole group instruction? Or did you notice how the culture of independent reading allowed the students to develop habits and attitudes and taste as a reader? The video also showed how independent reading builds students' stamina as readers by allowing them to exercise full control over the reading process. That control allows them to join book clubs or reading circles where they feel comfortable as readers to read, enjoy, and talk about self-selected books. A question that comes up often amongst secondary teachers is, why should I invest the time allowing my students to read independently when we have standards and tasks to teach and an assessment to prepare for? Please understand that independent reading, when done purposefully, allows students to develop taste as a reader. It builds students' reading stamina, and it allows them to independently apply what they have learned from your direct instruction. In order to get students to read independently, your instructional environment, be it face-to-face or virtual, must have a structure that promotes and supports independent reading. This brief list of steps is adapted from No More Fake Reading by Barrett Gordon. The first step in developing that structure is by getting books into your library that students will want to read. When collecting for a classroom library or suggesting an online reading platform, consider these questions. Do the books reflect the identities and experiences of your students? Do the books expose students to people and worlds outside of their own? Do the books represent a variety of genres? Is the library or collection organized and accessible for students? And does it have multiple copies of the more popular books? Step 2. Get those books off of that wish list and into your classroom library. If you are a veteran teacher, you probably know that building up a classroom library can take years. In addition to purchases made at the school level, you can build your own library from places like Donors Choose or an Amazon wish list, the Goodwill or Value Village, or any public library used book sales. Also keep in mind that access to digital text continues to increase through apps like Sora, which is available through the DCSD Launchpad. Steps 3 and 4 are necessary to make certain that there is an organization to your book library that allows the books to be accessible to your students. And again, more digital text being available through apps like Sora will minimize the need for a book checkout process. And step 5 is all about engagement. Here are a few strategies to engage your students in reading: book talks, book pass, and speed dating with books. Book talks, which are short talks used to hook students and introduce them to new books in your classroom library. These can be teacher-led or student-led, and they usually include information about the author, the illustrator, and the genre, and they usually provide a creative teaser of the plot or topic. Book talks usually take place in the classroom, but can easily be adapted to digital learning through video making on apps such as Flipgrid. BookPass and Bookomotive are a couple of other reading engagement strategies. These BookPass activities are encouraged by the ELA team as they allow students to work in small groups to preview, discuss, and share books with each other. Another engagement strategy is speed dating with books. Kelly Gallagher, co-author of 180 Days, Two Teachers and the Quest to Engage and Empower Adolescents, and a leading voice in literacy education, uses speed dating with books as a tool for students to create reading wish lists. Speed dating with books is effective because it gives students a chance to get to know a book before forming a committed relationship with it. During speed dating with books, students read the cover, the front and back flaps, and then begin actually reading the book during the speed dating time limit. Now, these 5 steps to setting up a classroom library for independent reading provide a condensed and adapted blend of what premier educators have been teaching for years on how to get students to read. Because independent reading should be included in your daily schedule, taking the time regularly to introduce a new book from your library or collection and provide your students opportunities to read independently helps scaffold students to meet the expectation of the standard, specifically standards RL10 and RI10. We all want our students to be self-directed learners, and independent reading can foster this growth. Moving them towards independence is a task that requires direction and intention. Building stamina helps the student to read for longer periods of time, but our goal is also to support students as they develop a love for reading. As a reminder, RL10 and RI10 standards for grades 6-12 are similar in that each set of standards expect students to be able to read at the high end of the range with scaffolded support. Including independent reading into your daily agenda ultimately supports students' ability to read at the high end of the range. This chart shows the approximate number of minutes that students should read daily during independent reading. Again, scaffolding is needed. For further comparisons, the RL10 and RI10 standards for grade 6-12 can be found in the resource folder of this module. Now, let's shift to discuss what the teacher should be doing during the independent reading time: conferring. The teacher should be conferring with students during independent reading. We confer for many reasons: to alter how a student reads, to support individual needs, to coach into a child's reading, and to informally assess student strengths and limitations. One of the simplest ways to begin conferring with students is to use the complement conference. The complement conference includes a few steps. Step 1, prepare. All students must have a self-selected book. Step 2, assess. The teacher asks the student questions and prompts him or her to talk about their reading. At this time, the teacher decides on next steps. And step 3, the complement. The teacher gives the student a clear complement and sends the student off to continue their independent reading. Here's a sample conferencing form that can help you frame a conference. In a complement conference, you were just watching and listening for what students are doing well. Affirm them and encourage them in order to reinforce those behaviors or strategies. There are several types of conferences you can use to support independent reading. The complement conference is the best place to start to build your own confidence and skill. Keeping anecdotal notes is a type of formative assessment that can help you track student growth. Okay, now we're going to take a few minutes to view another video. In this 1-minute clip, Jennifer Saravallo, author of the Reading Strategies book and the Teacher's Guide to Reading Conferences, conducts an independent reading conference with an 8th grade student. As you watch, look at the teaching moves that Jen makes. Think about your own challenges and goals you may have with conferring with your own students. Now, pause the module and watch the video. The link to the video is in the resource folder. Be sure to jot down your thoughts on the note-taking sheet, also in the resource folder. If you are working with the grade level team, turn and talk to discuss your responses. And please save your responses as evidence that you have worked through this module. Let us not forget that books are sometimes windows offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. Remember that books can transform the human experience and reflect it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as a part of a larger human experience. This is why we emphasize reading in DeKalb County. This is why we emphasize independent reading. We want our students' worlds to open up and allow them to see things they never could have imagined. As we conclude, let's take a moment to pause the module and reflect. Please use the self-assessment link in the resources folder to respond to the questions about independent reading. Think about where you are as a teacher with independent reading. How do you plan to keep your students engaged in independent reading? How will you dedicate an appropriate amount of time for independent reading? How will you make certain your classroom library includes text from a variety of genres and or levels? And how will you confer with your students to determine next steps as you listen to them read? Pause the module to reflect, and if you are working with the grade level team, please turn and talk and share some of your responses. We have also added a self-paced activity to extend your learning experience. Please take a moment to read this article, as it will support and deepen your understanding of the importance of independent reading in the ELA classroom. The article is titled, "Creating Passionate Readers Through Independent Reading," from the International Literacy Association. It can be found in the resource folder for this module. Here are some resources that can support your implementation of independent reading. First, the International Literacy Association is a professional organization that contains both research and practice guides around literacy. The American Library Association provides a wealth of book titles that you may want to consider as you build your classroom library. If you work in a Title I middle school, Jennifer Saravallo's books, Reading Strategies and Reading Conferences, have been provided to you by the Curriculum and Instruction Department. Check with your instructional coach or teacher librarian to locate copies of these resources at your school. And we definitely recommend The Book Whisperer by Donlin Miller and Book Love by Penny Kittle. Book Love has informed many of the shifts we have made in DeKalb County regarding independent reading in the ELA classroom. On behalf of the Department of Curriculum and Instruction and the District English Language Arts team, we thank you for participating in this module. Our ELA team is here to support you. Please reach out if you need any support. Thanks.